Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at Season 1 of Reachers, Episode 3, and comparing it to the book Killing Floor, and that's by Lee Child. So, as I've done with the previous episodes, give my take and commentary over anything that's been changed to try and update the series for the modern audience versus the book. And the book was set just after the Cold War had ended. So it's kind of like late 80s, early 90s. To kind of give you a context, it's more than likely like early 90s for where the book took place. But let's go ahead and get the episode started here and go from there. All right, here we go. All right, so the episode starting here, I'm having to do things a little bit differently due to a copyright claim by Amazon. It didn't matter how much I altered the video and the audio, for some reason they didn't want to go ahead and acknowledge fair use. So uh, there are subtitles that come up on here, and I'll be talking over it as we're going through. Now, this is continuing on from what happened in the last episode where it ended. The reaction here that Roscoe has is very different than what she had in the book. In the book, she was scared, and Reacher was trying to figure out how to go ahead and console her and explain that he would essentially be her protector, that she didn't need to worry, that she's going to be all right. Still needed a gun, so this is still a thing that happens. She's going to go ahead and get out the Desert Eagle that Gray had bequeathed to her. And there it is. And yeah, it's not a subtle weapon, it's a Desert Eagle. It's a hand cannon. It's a little weird in how she describes her relationship with Gray here in the series. He wasn't so much like a father figure or second father to her. He was a coworker who was good at his job, and she respected that. And so she was not in like any kind of romantic thing, but it was a close relationship, working relationship. And bam, this is a thing with Reacher. You never put trust in a weapon that you haven't personally fired before. So he typically would not use a weapon unless he knew that it worked and that he could rely on it. So this is Finley's first understanding of them being out in Alabama together. He's not happy about it. In the book, basically what happens here is... sorry, we're skipping ahead here. This is to get the results for the driver that worked for Kleiner. This is discovered through some research in the book based on just looking through this particular driver when they discover his identity. Basically, understanding that Kleiner had a lawyer on retainer that came to assist at a stop that was done with the truck. Now, Molly Beth Gordon here, I know we're kind of jumping around here, is someone that worked with Joe Reacher. She was actually very close, and it sounds like intimate with Joe Reacher. So Joe only trusted her within the FBI to provide her with any information about what he was doing. So this is the first of her finding out that he is dead. And she's hit hard by this. It's a little bit more dramatic here, but that comes across mainly because in the book it's from Jack's point of view. So we don't really get to see what she's doing on the other end of the phone. But Joe trusted her as far as letting her know that he was out in Margrave, and he was ahead of preventing counterfeiting from happening in the United States. And he had shut it down for the most part. He could track where supplies were being purchased that would normally be used for counterfeiting. So she's aware of that process, and she's able to confirm, as you can see here, that Joe was able to essentially stop that. In the book, because of that, and because of what the Coast Guard is doing, because of what the president had set up, which was a blockade. This was to actually prevent illegal immigration during that time period from occurring in the States. This also prevented counterfeiting from really taking place, getting into the States. So Joe was looking internationally to find out what was going on here. So they're trying to figure out how Hubble works into this and how this driver works into this situation here. So the tasks here that are being divvied up, in the book, it's actually handled by Jack Reacher. But for purposes here of the show, it doesn't make sense, from what I can understand, for the writer's point of view, to have these three characters that are working together not have anything to do. So with Roscoe here back at work, she's got her work ponytail in. She's going to be hunting down the rental vehicle that was used. Now, in the book, she is hunting down a rental vehicle, but it's to find out Joe Reacher's rental vehicle, so they can try and find out where he was staying and see if there's any kind of clues that were left there about what Joe was actually looking into. Hubble's in-law here is fishing for some information about what's going on with Reacher, with Finley, and with Roscoe, because his family is not able to be located right now. That's because last episode, Charlie went into hiding. Now, it's really tense here inside of the police station because we don't know in the show how many people are involved with the venture here involving Hubble. And for Finley here, he's going out to find Spivey, which doesn't happen in the book at all. The reason for this scene, for me, it seems, and this is my take, is they wanted to paint a picture of the racist South when it comes to like the police force, and how Finley, being a black man from Boston, from up north, having to adjust being in Georgia, being a part of this police force, being the chief of detectives, even though there's only one detective in Margrave, having to deal with that. And as you can see, he's in another county. They don't give him a chance to talk here, and they basically stump a mud hole in him and walk it dry. Now, Reacher here, he's meeting with a co-worker, or boss as it were, for the deceased driver. And Reacher here is just trying to get some information here so he can kind of track down what the driver was up to. It's a bit funny here how the scene plays out. Doesn't really play out this way, but he still gets the information just the same. So, Jobling, just to kind of recap what happened with him, he's the other person that was found on the roadside killed next to Joe, or near Joe, on the same evening. And so Jack's positioning here is to find out why this other guy was there, how he's involved, and Jack's out of patience with people at this point. And Jack makes it a point not to come and find him. Meanwhile, Finley here is nursing his wounds, as it were, for being put into the scene that didn't happen in the book. Roscoe's here to pick him up, and witnesses, basically that's the whole reason for the scene, is that regardless of him being the way that he is, being a black man in a suit, investigating outside of his county in a Department of Corrections person's home, that he shouldn't have been treated that way, even if he wasn't. But, it's just making a judgment statement. And Roscoe's positioning there is to show that she's not a racist cop, because she fights against the other cops there, as far as like with words. Now we're at Jolene's. It's not a place that exists in the book, but this is a fun scene. And I know it sounds like I'm giving criticisms for deviations from the book. I'm really not. They're two different formats here, and they're also having to modernize what's going on here in the show. Reacher doesn't like the food that Finley ordered, and Finley doesn't understand how Reacher can eat that amount of food and the types of food and maintain his build. They're discussing the findings of the different locations here. In the book, both Roscoe and Finley are actually tied up because of Teal at the police station. As I had mentioned, all three of them are given tasks in the show here, so they all show some value instead of Reacher being a one-man army, as it were, figuring everything out himself. So they're criticizing the way that they went about getting the information, whereas Reacher says he just used the phone as it were to get the information, and Finley is using some legal mumbo jumbo for doing breaking and entering. Meanwhile, Roscoe is playing go-between between the two. And this is another character building scene here with the dog again coming back. And Finley is asking the question that a lot of the book readers are probably asking: why are we dealing with this? And it's just so we can see that the citizens of Margrave are not necessarily probably the best of people. This one's mean to dogs. Now we're here at Kleiner's, where it's weird because they have that gate there. It makes you think that they're going to their home. They're not. This is the place of work. And Reacher is looking at all of the feed that's being unloaded. Now, this woman here that they cast actually looks a lot like the description of Roscoe from the book. Same kind of demeanor. So I thought it was a little weird that they would have a character that's like this, at least the way they cast her. She would have been perfect to play Roscoe if we're going with the same kind of character that was depicted in the book. Jack recognizes that there's a bunch of dead animals on the wall, so they must be good at shooting. This meeting doesn't happen with Kleiner in the book, at least not in this way. Reacher does meet Kleiner at the diner. It's kind of in passing. There's not really much interaction between the two, but you get a sense of what kind of person Kleiner is there. I guess you can't really do that with the show. They want you to have a look of who the villain is and kind of get a sense of, here's a man with a lot of power, and that he's letting Reacher and Finley know here that he's in charge and that he's untouchable, in a sense of like trying to divert the attention of the investigation away from him, letting them know that they're wasting their time by looking at him. And also pointing out where Finley is lacking in his job. In the book, Kleiner and Teal and kind of have a role to play in Finley getting the position, because they thought Finley would not be actually good as a chief of detectives for Margrave, and that's the position that Finley took over because Gray hung himself in the book, and I believe they said that he did that here also in the show. Finley is talking about his dad now, saying that you can't tell me what to do, you're not my daddy. Reacher thinks it's ridiculous, so he's having a laugh. And Kleiner's like, yeah, I'm done with this. Get out. Now this gets Reacher's mind kind of rolling, and, well, here's a callback to Finley's statement about cursing. Now laughing about, you're not my daddy. Horatio Finley's my daddy. And it's a good time for a flashback now that we're talking about bullies. And now we go to young Joe and Jack here, talking about how the Reachers deal with bullies. This is not a thing in the book. I haven't come across it. I'm 4 books into the series for Jack Reacher, and they have not had any flashbacks to them as a kid and what life was like with his family. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen in future books. There's a lot of books in this series, so there's always the potential that it may have come up, and they're just throwing it in here to flesh out the characters while they can as they're going on. Now they're talking about what to do next here. And for the most part, this is not a thing again in the book. Reacher's telling Finley that he needs to go and find a place to lie low while still working as needed. And reluctantly, Finley is agreeing to. You can see off-duty Roscoe because her hair is down. All right, and so now they're talking about cattle and the feed and why it bothers Reacher. It's not a thing in the book, but it's a little funny, to have this kind of thing going on. For those of you that are noticing that my lip sync is not on, that's because I'm having to re-record this without the audio of the show running in the background. So there'll be some changes going forward here with how I'll continue this series, and I'll work out how this is going to go with episodes 4, 5, and 6, provided that you're able to actually watch this one here with all the changes I'm having to make so that they won't copyright claim the video, even though this is strictly just fair use. Now, Reacher is explaining how he's going to go ahead and take out Spivey, as it were, to get the information in regards to how this is all related to Kleiner. And Roscoe is like, I need to go get some supplies. So we run into Kleiner Jr. here. This conversation is actually a conversation that kind of goes down with Reacher and Kleiner Jr. directly. This happens also in the diner. Effectively, Kleiner Jr. has a thing for Roscoe, and he's like thinking of her as his girl. It doesn't come across here in the show. I think they wanted to make a little bit more of a cerebral type of foe for Reacher, but in the book, he's a lot more unhinged. And now we have Finley meeting up with Hubble's old boss. Again, in the books, this is a Reacher thing, but this is to give Finley something to do while Reacher's out trying to track down Spivey. And in the books, they go into a lot more detail because Reacher's approach to it is to say that he's looking for an old friend, Hubble, and that he worked at this bank. And the boss is he's sorry to give the bad news that Hubble hasn't been there for like a year. And then Reacher gets a sense that this guy likes to talk, so he sits quiet. And so the boss starts to volunteer information, kind of which she did there, but he goes into more details of, oh, by the way, this scene here with Finley and this lady at the bar and her trying to pick him up, and you're kind of like wondering, well, Finley's still feels he's married and still wants to get back with his woman. What's he going to do here? This is not a thing at all in the book. But going back to the boss that was there for Hubble, he explains the changes that were made for his bank. That his company decided that they didn't want to do personal banking, like for the public that would come in and set up like a checking account or a savings account, those types of things. They got away from that and are into a little bit different kind of banking where they handle trades. The reason being is money for banking of that type where, you get the checking and personal accounts. What Hubble's job was to do was to track down money to bring into the bank so that people that were coming to get like withdrawals would be able to get them, like their ones, their fives, their 20s, stuff like that. He was able to track down that money because in reality, for the amount of dollars that are available, like when you put your money in the bank, right, for deposit, you only have like in a ledger how much money you actually have. The amount of money actually located within the vault of the bank is not necessarily going to equate to what people have deposited into the bank because as a deposit is made, somebody else makes a withdrawal and that money is doled out to that person. So there's only so much money that's actually in circulation in reality, right? So what's discussed, and this is again numbers from like the 1990s for the money that's amount in circulation. Before I continue, Reacher's here now at the bar looking for Spivey, trying to get an idea of anybody knowing where Spivey is gone. This is not really a thing in the book. But I'll get back to that here in just a moment. Just to finish up the explanation here with the amount of money that's available in the world that's in circulation. If every person that's in the United States were to do a $400 transaction to where they go ahead and withdraw that from their account, there would not be enough money to handle that type of transaction from all the people in the United States. There would not be enough money to actually give to people, even though for the most part, most people have more than $400 in their bank account. So that's what made Hubble's job important. He was smart enough to be able to figure out where to obtain money so that the bank would be able to do that. But because they got out of that business, Hubble was out of work for like a year. So in the book, Kleiner comes around and provides him with a job, and Hubble needs work, so he takes it. Now, in the scene here, Reacher's got information about two Spanish guys leaving with Spivey, and that Spivey is gone. So Reacher comes out, notices the vehicle, goes back in, gets out. Now he's driving a Jaguar here. In the book, he's driving a Bentley. to me, a Bentley is a lot more expensive, so I don't know if it's a budget thing or they just couldn't get the rights for a Bentley. But it's still an expensive vehicle, driving a Jaguar. So we have this chase here. I know it's hard to see anything that's going on here, but in the book, from what I understand, this happens in the daytime. Here they have it at night. It gives a little bit more believability to Reacher being able to hide out in the dark here after jumping out of the SUV or the Jaguar. Meanwhile, these two guys are well-trained military. Reacher takes them out from behind. This does happen in the book this way. Now, in the book and also in the show here, they had mentioned that there was two Spanish gentlemen that were looking for Reacher. Reacher happens to be chased by them in the book. He gets the jump on or the drop on them and is able to go ahead and get them from behind. And that's where he discovers Spivey, just like he did here. And this will go ahead and end this episode here of Reacher Season 1, Episode 3. And if you'd like to see the series continue, definitely comment in the comment section below. Share the video, give it a like. If you're new here, please subscribe. And, feedback is important. I like to get feedback about what you think of the show. Again, I do apologize. I try to get these videos out on Monday, but the last couple of times here, I've run afoul of Amazon's stance on copyright. As far as the last one got approved, it took a few days to get it approved. This time, for some reason, they didn't want to relent, and so I'm having to re-record this and re-upload it. Hopefully, this will pass muster because I have a watermark over it again. When I uploaded it the first time, I actually had a filter that made everything look like it was posterized artwork. So I put a lot of time into it to try and make it so that it's not to disguise it, it's to make it so that it's not able to be used as like rebroadcast work for anybody. So that kind of removes that from the equation of people thinking, at least from Amazon side of it, that I'm trying to rebroadcast their episode. I mean, this doesn't even run the full length of the episode because it's cut down so much. And this is just to give commentary of comparing the book to the series and what the changes that were made were. So I'm not sure why they're holding so strongly to preventing it from being out. Of course, there's going to be spoilers here, but it's not like I'm rebroadcasting the whole episode just so that somebody can sit here and watch it while I sit here and eat popcorn or chew bubblegum, eat beef jerky or whatever, and watch the episode. That's not what's being done here. This is critique. This is review. If you have anything to add to the conversation, definitely, like I said, comment below. Give me a subscribe. If you think anybody else would enjoy this, please share. But otherwise, that's going to do that here for this episode. And I appreciate you tuning in and being a part of this journey of putting out videos like this.